Welcome back to Hope After Loss. I'm Marilyn. Today I want to talk about something grief quietly changes, and that is our sense of who we are. We, of course, expect to grieve the person we lost or the person that we know is in a dying place, but we don't expect to grieve the person we used to be. That sometimes comes as a surprise to some of my clients. I had to ask myself, how did I change after my son Chris passed away? And there is a shift after loss, there's no doubt about it. You're not going to feel like yourself. I know I didn't. And the changes that happen sometimes are surprising. Things that once mattered no longer felt important to me, and you might notice that in your own life. I know I was emotionally exhausted. The brain never shuts down, and we're not just taking care of pieces of life that will present itself to us, but we're also going over and over and over and over again and trying to hold on to the past. So there is exhaustion, and some of us really wear it, and our bodies change. And we look in the mirror and we're surprised. I know I felt like I had 100 more gray hairs that popped up. And of course, I noticed some additional lines in my face, which never really bothered me, still doesn't. But to me, it's just an indicator that I've had, some rough times and I survived. And they're a reminder of that. But I noticed that, my roles as a sister, as a mom, as a friend, as a counselor, so on and so forth, I was changing in them. And sometimes I didn't even recognize myself. Priorities were really different. I know that I didn't sweat the small stuff, and little things didn't even grab my attention anymore. And they still don't. I can really roll with things, accept them, let them go, toss them out a lot quicker than most. And I think it is because of the journey that I've walked with my son's addiction to his death and after, trying to pick up the pieces. Sometimes after these kinds of losses, we do look in the mirror and barely recognize who we see. And for some people, that's just another thing that they will grieve over. When they look around the room and they see the sadness in the faces and the expressions of the people that they love, the people that they're close to, it's a constant reminder that something uncontrollable and very drastic just happened to all of us. And so, we try not to wear it. Women do a better job sometimes, we'll dye our hair and we'll put on a bunch of makeup, even though I'm not for the makeup part, but we just know how to hide things that we're embarrassed of. So you will notice a shift after loss. I noticed, some medical conditions that just suddenly popped up, and that was all from inflammation, which was all from cortisol. Just constantly living with an overdose of cortisol. There's no avoiding that when there's a lot of trauma that you have to walk through, and every day just seems to be a repeat of the day before. So our roles and our identities do change. Now, when you look at yourself as a mother or a father or a brother or a sister, I'm sure that you notice that you're different. And it's important to notice some of the differences because there are some things you can do about them when you're aware of them. And we do have to be aware that, something big has happened and we're going to have to take care of the consequences of that. I know for myself, as a mom, of course, I had to be there for my surviving son. And at times it was really hard for me to do that because I just didn't have a whole lot to give. But I would push it out anyhow. But was I as tolerant of bad decisions or poor decisions or weak decisions? No, no. I just got stricter and firmer about the fact that we only have so much time, and doesn't it make sense to get it right? Why repeat things that just have failed in the past? Makes no sense to me. Caregiver was difficult. If somebody was sick around me, I just went, oh no. And because I just didn't have, again, a lot to give. We're running on empty most of the time. So we have to be aware of these things, and we can't be ashamed, and we can't feel guilty about it. Makes no sense. There's no room in there for that. So, you look at how you've changed as a person and how this shift has occurred after the loss of someone that you love. And grief will change these roles. And it's always important to recognize it, be aware, be awakened to the fact that something really, really impossible happened. And here you are. You're getting up and you're doing what you have to do, but not the same. And you're doing what you have to do, but you don't feel the same. And you're doing what you have to do and you don't look the same. But that's to be expected. There's no getting around that. I know my son, his passing was the most difficult thing I've ever had to do in my lifetime. And all I know is that when I look at how I changed, it isn't all so bad. And I recognize that even in the moment when I had to walk in the room after he took his final breath, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm so strong. I can't believe it. It's like a miracle. It's like a miracle that I'm still standing. And, I don't know if you believe in that concept that there are miracles, but it's a good time to embrace it. Some of this stuff is truly impossible for a mother or father to go through, but we do it. We do it. And I feel that that's the miracles. And there's good examples of how they work in our lives and how we are worthy of one of those. And oftentimes, it goes even further into our belief system when we're going through grief and how it alters, like it can, our understanding of life and life as we thought it was going to be. We all get caught up and, really feel like we can change, we can create, we can do the things that we have in the viewfinder and that we have in the viewfinder when we look over at someone that we love. We believe that, we can alter these paths. We can create things, like we're pretty powerful. And we really are. But sometimes we can't save a life. And that is something that we have to accept. And that changes our understanding of life. And it changes our understanding of who we are in that space. Of course, being a therapist, and I'm in my 49th year, so I do feel like I've learned a lot, I've grown a lot, and I have a lot to offer. But a death like this, I could understand if, there's cancer or there's a car accident, but when I think about drug addiction, wow, what an unnecessary way to go. That's a choice. That's a choice that they make. to continue to do something that's not working, or to think that it's not a serious path that they're on. But my understanding of my role in all of it has changed. I know that when someone is asking me for help, then my expertise and my willingness to meet them halfway is a lot easier. And it usually ends with some level of success. But in this case, that's not what I was able to do. And so, we've got to become someone different in order to really be able to wear this well and to understand just everything that's going on around us and within us. And I know I've mentioned this in other episodes, but most adults, especially moms, dads, you're on a mission to help your kids. You're going to save their lives. And, but in this case, I mean, we better pay attention to our own, because there's a lot going on that's different. And we need to be aware of it, because if it's not working for us, we can do something about it if we're aware of it. But if if we're blindsided by it, and someone's trying to tell us something that could be constructive, that could be very helpful, we might not always embrace it in a way that's going to allow us to create some change, necessary change. So one thing that I've learned about myself is that, when I really felt like I was starting to grab some of the pieces of life that would just show up every day, like the sun, like the smell of the meat just on the grill as it's grilling, people's perfume, their colognes, colors. I just had to fight the fact that I wasn't letting go of my life with my son. I was learning how to live with a life, in a life, without him. And there's nothing to feel guilty about if you find yourself belly laughing again, and there's nothing to feel bad about when you do have to change things around in the house and, get rid of clothes or bedding or whatever it is, change rooms around. It's rebuilding, and it is necessary for us to rebuild. That is our responsibility. And so it's important that we don't carry guilt, because there's a good part of us that will allow that to stop us right in our tracks. And, when we find ourselves starting to rebuild, starting to take those first baby steps, to figure out what the new normal is as we're looking in the mirror, it might be grayer hair, it might be, an aged look now, but it just means that we are moving forward the best we can. And that's healing. And that doesn't mean that we're leaving our loved ones behind. It just means that in their honor, we're going to try to embrace what we can and work with it. And I've always made that promise to my son, that I would never, never, just roll up in a ball and just lay on the couch and not live my life, because that is the last thing that he would want. And and so I make a promise to do that, but I have to be aware of who I am and how I've changed in order to do it properly. So when we look at what's this loss all about, well, it does change us. But, it's a strange way of looking at it, but it doesn't erase us. It doesn't. And the evidence of it is, we still love deeply, and we always will. We always will. And we're not going to slow that down. And how we know that is that's why we're grieving. That's why we cry at night and cry ourselves to sleep. That's why we wake up with less than what we had before this loss occurred. Because we do have big hearts and we have experienced love. And that's usually what helps us to fight the battle and to keep on keeping on. I mean, it creates a shift and it's kind of gentle, but it does create some hope for us. So our grief is not really asking us to become who we were before. It really isn't. But it's necessary that we discover who we're becoming now. And that means we're going to have to be aware of the good around us and within us. So before we close today, I want to leave you with just something to ponder. In what ways would you say that grief has changed who you are? And what parts of you still remain intact? It's good to look at these things, and you could share them with your partner or somebody who's interested. So, I mean, even after loss, there are still pieces of us that will remain the same, and that is the love that we carry in our hearts. But there are going to be new parts of ourselves just waiting to gently emerge because it's necessary now. This is Hope After Loss, and I'm so glad you're here with me today. And I want to wish all the moms out there a happy Mother's Day. I hope you make it work. Do it for the person that you love, even if you can't do it for yourself. Make it work, and just remember that you are loved. And I will talk to you soon.